Hello everyone, welcome back. Good to see you. Doing something a little different here today, and I'm going to try and keep this brief because I'd like to make it for the Chiefs kickoff. But this is a video I've been thinking about making for a while, and honestly, if I had a better method or mechanism for doing it, I probably wouldn't have made it on Facebook Live. But really, it stems back to a conversation I had with Dave Rubin's husband on Dave's Locals. And his husband David cooks a lot, and has these really amazing recipes and stuff that he does, and these huge kitchen knives. And I told him I'd make him a video, show him like how I sharpen my knives, and kind of my philosophy of why it's important to keep sharp knives, and so on and so forth. And so that's kind of what this is. But the reason why I decided to make it now, gosh, I want to get to stairwell. I would have done it outside up there, but it's super windy out. So anyway, here we are. I felt like I was like setting up some type of Instagram shot. It's so janky the way I do stuff. This is like a cooler and a plastic tub, and my phone's on top of it. Anyway, so yeah, but I think that kind of some of the underlying I think is really important, especially for right now, how crazy things are. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you kind of my knife sharpening technique, and then once I get into that, then I'll just kind of sit here and just talk to you while I'm, doing a little sharpening here and there. So the first thing I'll say is I use a Smith's diamond sharpened double edge. So we have a fine side and a coarse side, and I use this for all my knives, kitchen knives or outdoor knives or whatever. I use it for all of them. And one way to tell if your knives need to be sharpened or if they're dull is usually, well, if you're using it a lot, if it's a kitchen knife, your butt off just to cut like a green pepper or something, or a chicken. And that's the other part of why you want to keep them sharp, is because a dull knife is a dangerous knife, because you have to put more effort into pretty effortless. But there's something called the paper test that people do, and that is if your knife can kind of effortlessly cut paper. That's how you can tell. This is just my pocket knife, Kershaw. It's a Volt SS, I think. But if your knife can kind of just cut paper like that, then they say it's probably all right. Probably good. Whereas if you're having trouble with cutting the paper, then it's probably dull. But again, if you're using your kitchen knife every day, or most days, if it needs to be sharpened, right? You're gonna know, because you're like, gosh, it's a pain in the butt. So that's just a test you can do whenever you're done sharpening, to see if you're happy with the results, or if you need to keep going or need to do it again, so on and so forth. But anyway, so I use this guy here, and it's pretty compact, good, fits in here. I like it. And then there's another kind of sharpener. I don't use this for my kitchen knives. Trade makes this little diamond rod, and that's good for knives like my pocket knife that's got a little curve to it, and some outdoor knives have an even more pronounced curve in the middle, and that's because it'll give you more cutting area, more surface area for your edge, so you can cut more, or it's easier to cut things if you have more of a sharp edge. But you can't use a straight thing like this to cut a knife that's got a big pronounced curve, and so this rod is good for a knife that's a little bit more curved. Whereas kitchen knife like this, it's a flat edge, right? So, but I'll show you how to use this here in a minute. The other thing I have here that you don't have to use but I just made one because I like to get it really is this just a strop. All it is a piece of scrap leather that was pretty, and I glued it to a ruler, and that's it. I put some hops gun oil on it and use it to strop my knives. I might show you, I might not, depending on where we're at on time. Like I said, I've got a football game. So I'll show you what I do here. I got a jar of water here, and I like to keep my sharpener wet. Actually, I will show you this. This is something I've never done any woodworking or anything before, but I'm making this stool out of a log. Use that. I'm pretty excited about that. Alright, that's just me. Wanted to show that off, I guess. Anyway, sorry, not sorry. But I like to keep a jar of water for dipping my sharpener, or yeah, my stone in. You don't have to. You can do it dry, but one, this I found that it just goes a little smoother whenever it's wet. And the other thing is, by having that, you'll accumulate little flecks, just powder from that you're taking off of the knife edge. And so by having like some water and a rag, you know, you can kind of wipe that junk off as you're going. Anyway, so a little bit more on here. But you always want to start coarse and then go fine. And this technique, there's lots of different techniques you can use. This is just what works for me. But anyway, so get your knife, and you want to find, the way you find your edge is, so you set the knife down kind of flat, okay, and then you tilt it up until it's basically a seamless like ramp with the sharpening edge. And you don't apply very much pressure. This is finesse. It's like you're just thinly slicing a piece of cheese or something. Gosh, it's so windy, man. It's super windy. Anyway, so you just kind of go like that. And sometimes I'll put my finger like right here. 3, 4, 5. And then you want to switch it, and then you're going to go the other way because you want to keep even strokes. 1, 2. See, I'm not putting any pressure at all. 5. Okay. And then you can kind of get some of that dust off if you want, whatever. If you don't do it evenly and you don't keep track of it very well, which once I get talking, I bet I won't keep track of it very well, but it's okay. Your knife edge will go, you'll get kind of this stuff going on, and it won't cut very well. And you can also kind of look down the edge. I'm not saying you guys can see this, but I can see this. Looking down the edge to see, like, is it even? And yeah, it's pretty even. So you do that just a little bit, and then you can go back and forth if you want. I like to, maybe do 5 to 10 on one side, 5 to 10 on the other side, but you can do either way. And then, so now for like a bigger one, like a big kitchen knife like this, you'll notice I got a lot of real estate here that I have to cover, right? I always use this tiny one for like everything, and my wife loves this big honking knife. And I know a lot of people use like these big kitchen knives, that's fine. I'm lazy, so I like using that little guy. But anyway, so for this, it's the same kind of thing, but with this one, I actually sharpener with the knife a little bit. But it's just whatever technique works for you. But I would have a harder time kind of going like that. I've just found this is what helps me. It's the same kind of thing. I move it just a little bit, but it's find my edge. 3, 4, 5, 6, and I kind of give it a little bit, and you're just going along the edge. And then I'll do the same thing here. 1, 2. And then, usually you can spend the same amount of time on the coarse as you do on the fine side. Really, you don't have to spend time on the coarse if your knife isn't super duper dull. Hopefully you don't let it get that dull. But if it's not that dull, you can just spend a little time here, and then really spend most of your time on the fine side. And then if it's an outdoor knife, the last thing I'll say before I kind of get into why I think this is important, just as a philosophical thing, is that you also want to oil your knives. Like, the kitchen knives, maybe not as much, but if you have, like, again, the pocket knife, you want to keep it clean, oil your knives. Again, I use Hops gun oil. Same with, like, if you have a hatchet, same kind of thing, any of those knives, because it just helps it stay, to not get rusty. Anyway, okay, so why am I, normally I'm talking about, like, politics and how much the media sucks, right? Why am I in my stairwell of my 100-year-old house? Seriously, my house is super old. Look at these stairs. I don't know if you can tell. These stairs are like a 1.5 feet tall in some places. Like super duper tall, man. My house is crazy old. But why am I doing this? Why am I sitting here, talking about this? Well, especially with, how inflamed things are right now, I think it's good, and this is also for me, to take a step back, and kind of reflect on what I think is just kind of some words of wisdom, useful life advice, whatever you want to call it. Maybe it's useful. You can tell me in the comments if you don't think it's useful. That's fine, too. But up first, I'm going to tell you a story, all right? And then I'll get into, kind of how it relates to this. And regardless of your beliefs or lack thereof, anything like that. There's a lot of wisdom in these stories. And so I think, stick around if, the minute you hear me start talking about David and Goliath, you're like, oh God, he's going to preach to us or something. No, not. There's just some wisdom here. So everyone's familiar, most people are familiar with the story of David and Goliath. We kind of use it as a stand-in for just, like an underdog story, right? Like, gosh, it's like David versus Goliath, They was a total underdog, and they managed to win out. It's the craziest thing ever. David, he's this little guy, little shepherd guy, and he uses this sling, and he manages to, slings a rock at Goliath, hits him in the head, and then runs over and cuts his head off, and the battle's won, right? The Philistines, they leave. So I want to get into kind of two different ways to look at that story and then how that relates to this, okay? So everyone has their, Jordan Peterson's Clean Your Room. There's this general, I can't remember what his name is, he gives this speech. It's a pretty viral video, like make your bed, everyone has their thing. Mine's sharpen your knives, okay? That's it. So when David, before he goes to fight Goliath, he goes and talks to King Saul. And Saul is very skeptical that David, this little shepherd boy, is going to go Goliath, a seasoned military monster, really. The guy was huge. And Saul asks him, why do you think you can do this? And David says, well, I watch my father's sheep. I'm out there, every day protecting him. And there have been times that a lion showed up and a bear showed up, and both times I was able to kill the lion and kill the bear and snatch the sheep back from them. And, who is this Philistine, this uncircumcised Philistine, right? If I can take a lion and a bear, the Lord is with me, I can go and take out Goliath. And he does. He, grabs 3 stones from the river, and he takes his sling, and he goes out there and he takes out Goliath, right? So we have 3 times, as told by David, there are at least 3 times that he's used the sling, right? A lion, a bear, and Goliath, okay? So I'm going to give just 2 different scenarios here, and you can tell me which one you think's plausible. Also, it's a rhetorical question. But the first that David, he's the youngest, has a super boring job. Give him the job no one wants, to go sit in a field and watch sheep. And it's crazy boring, it's mundane. And he just sits out there, whatever, playing in the dirt like I did in outfield back in Little League, just doing nothing. And one day a lion shows up, and he's like, what do I do? He's freaking out. He's like, oh yeah, Dad gave me this sling. And so he, rummages around, finds the sling, and he's like, and just lucky shot, incapacitates the lion, goes and kills the lion. Wow, pretty impressive. And then he never touches the sling again, and however long later, a bear shows up. And he's like, oh, what did I do last time? Oh, yeah, there's that sling laying around here somewhere. And he uses it again, amazing, lucky shot, and incapacitates the bear and rescues the sheep. And then when the Philistines invade, and he goes and he's talking to Saul, he remembers, he's like, well, I killed this bear and this lion, I had these 2 insanely lucky shots. My guess is I'll get lucky a 3rd time, And he goes and he gets the stones and he does, wow, boom, 3 lucky shots. The only time he's ever used that sling was during these extreme times of, great crisis and need, and he never used it other than that, right? So that's one scenario. I suppose it's possible, sure, okay. So I'm going to give you another scenario. The other scenario is that David is the youngest, and he's given a boring, mundane, just crappy job, sitting in a field with a bunch of sheep all day. It's smelly, and it's, it's just, it's tedious. But he uses that time to develop a skill and to, keep himself sharp. And so he uses this sling just in case something happens. And he sits up there and he's shooting at trees, probably, I wonder if I can get that rock over there, developing all these trick shots, I don't know. But anyway, the point is that he's using the sling, and he gets pretty decent at it, and then a lion shows up. And he's like, oh, okay, I can do this. It's into practice, what he had been developing, and he takes out the lion. Yes, that is It's a good thing to know how to do. It's a good thing to not just waste this, downtime. So then he keeps practicing, and then a bear shows up, right? And then once the bear shows up, he's like, I got that freaking lion, man. There's this bear, Maybe he wasn't smiling, but he's, feeling a little bit more confident. And sure enough, they say practice makes perfect. I actually like the phrase practice makes permanent. That if you practice something, it becomes permanent in your life. And so he's good at it, boom, takes up the bear. Then however long later, the Philistines invade. And, so he has these spikes, these short bursts of excitement and crisis, however long stretches of, just boring time in the middle. And after the bear, however long, the Philistines come, and then it's like, I can do this. I've taken out the bear, I've taken out the lion, the Lord is with me, I feel confident in my skill, and he goes and gets the stones, boom, gets Goliath, incapacitates him, maybe kills him. Either way, David's able to distance and chops off Goliath's head, and that's it. So what in the world does this story have to do with sharpening knives? What does it have to do with sharpening knives? One thing I've learned the older I get is that life is mostly tedium. It is, that adulting thing, right? It's mostly responsibilities. It's mostly mundane. It's mostly just kind of ho-hum. And then there are these times of, crisis, or times that are more difficult than others, where you have to focus on something. And one is that there's just a phrase, or maybe I guess it's two, and that is that discipline breeds discipline, and compromise breeds compromise. And I found that when I'm disciplined in the little things in life, I'm more likely to be disciplined and measured and contemplative in the big things in life, whenever things are a little bit more hectic. And that whenever I compromise and I'm letting things slide, then I'm more likely to, in the little things, I'm more likely to do that with the bigger things. I'm more likely to be more reactive, and not. And I think that sharpening your knives is one of the best aspects of just regular discipline in the day-to-day ho-hum drudgery of life, in my opinion. It's not super glamorous. It's kind of it's a deferred gratification thing unless you're about to go cook with them, with all of your knives. You're investing in something now for your future self. And it's also something that the benefit of not just, being able to cut things easier, but you're being conscious of the fact that a sharp knife is a safe knife. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but the less effort you have to put into cutting stuff, the more control you can have. And the more effort, the more clunky and jerky your motions are. And it's more dangerous because you have to put more force behind it, and you might be cutting, a piece of chicken or something, and and it slips because you're having to put a lot of effort into it. So you're purchasing some safety again for the future, and you're just thinking about that. It's again delayed gratification, and it's also it's the more time you spend being careful and getting it right, then the sharper they're going to be, and the duller you let a knife get, the harder it's going to be to bring it back to being sharp again at a later point in time. And so my point is that things are crazy right now. I know that 2020 feels like the longest stretch of just WTFs and just high intensity. And it can be easy to be reactive and let little things slide, and to just be so tunnel visioned in on everything else. Like I said, I kind of had a little bit of a freak out on Monday because I just get worried about how this stuff is impacting our country, how this is impacting each other and treat each other. But we still have to be disciplined in the little things, and if you use your time and use your, I guess, emotional energy, physical energy, and all that stuff to be intentional about cultivating discipline, cultivating, the act of not compromising the little things. Whenever life is, kind of ho-hum and there's not much payoff for it, then later in life, whenever things get crazy, you're going to just have that, practice makes permanent. It's going to be your default to be measured, to be disciplined, to think about things, to not be reactive, because you will have developed that during the downtime in life. And so that's my encouragement to you guys is, be thinking about what does it look like to be not just reactive and caught up in this craziness, but to kind of slow down, to be disciplined, again, that's that Jordan Peterson thing, right? Like, set your house in order before you criticize the world. Are there ways in which that you're being, not disciplined? Are there ways in which you're compromising, in which you're, maybe not being the person you want to be, or that you could be, or that you should be in this craziness right now? So that it might be better to focus on that instead of just, spewing all over the internet. Anyway, just some food for thought. But to bring it back to knives, okay? So to recap, find your edge. I'm going to go back to fine because I already did coarse here. All right, I'm going to get this wet again. Find your edge. You can do it by setting it flat on here and then lifting it up. Setting it flat, lifting it up. Think of it like a seamless ramp. Spend however much time you have to. Not a lot of pressure. Not a lot of intensity. Just slow, smooth strokes. Just like, you're David in the field. Shoot, just aiming at trees with your sling, just killing time. Because I will use this knife eventually. Use it to cut some chicken, or maybe some cantaloupe. I like to get some cantaloupe before it's totally out of season. Just going. Do that enough. Get the fibers off. You probably shouldn't do what I do there, but I'm just, do as I say, not as I do. Don't wipe the dust off with your fingers. Use the rag or the paper towels that I brought that I'm sitting on that I'm not using. But anyway, so that's how you do that. So again, it's just a little act of just investing in an active discipline, right? So be disciplined, be measured. Don't be reactive with this crazy stuff. Like I said, I kind of made that mistake, I think, on Friday, and I'm trying to pull back and be calm. And anyway, Kevin and I did a video this morning talking about we just had a conversation about the RBG stuff, RBG. Sometimes I think RGB, but that doesn't make any sense. Okay, yeah, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. May she rest in peace. So I'll post that up, I think, tomorrow morning. I need to coordinate that with Kevin. But anyway, that's my stuff on sharpening knives. You can give me some feedback if you think that was stupid, or if you thought it was interesting, or if you have a different technique, or just, what are some of the little things you kind of attach to a life philosophy that, you see as some of the things that help, you stay in line. Like, different people have different ways of conceptualizing discipline and just, being a decent person in their own mind. For me, it's the act of sharpening knives, because also for me, it's not just for me, right? Like, I'm sharpening it so that my wife is safe whenever she uses it. Again, it's not glamorous, but if I'm disciplined in that, then it's a way of, making sure that my wife is safer whenever she's, using the kitchen knives or any of the other knives or hatchet or anything. But whatever you guys have, maybe you have something that is kind of my little clean your room or sharpen your knives kind of thing, So anyway, if this is the kind of thing you're into, share, subscribe, follow me on Twitter. That's at My Mundane Mind. On YouTube, Return to Reason, my locals page, which is where I definitely encourage you guys to go as well, is returntoreason.locals.com. I'm on ThinkSpot, Return to Reason. I post stuff on Medium. I'm hoping to have part 2 of this thing I've been working on done by tomorrow. So hopefully I'll have that posted up tomorrow on like the very last section of it, and I don't know how to close this part out. So anyway, all right, that's it, guys. Go Chiefs, and I will check you next time. All right, hey, be good to each other. Peace.